This is Redfall. We're here on Xbox Series S. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So we're taking a look at the Series S version. I checked out the Series X version prior. And I wanted to make a note again that this is what I believe to be the worst first-party title Xbox has ever released. I do want to also note that Xbox/Microsoft did not want to send this game early ahead of launch for me to check out, which is a big... it's weird because, you know, I've been getting all the big titles since literally Forza Horizon 2, Sunset Overdrive. So, to me, it's a bit of a weird situation. But I wanted to get that across because Bethesda sent a code so that I could take a look at this. And I mostly wanted to kind of mention that that doesn't really impact my thoughts on the game, or I'm going to try to basically remove that element from it to give you an honest opinion of the game, minus any sort of, like, relationship type issues, I guess you would say. So, yeah, what are we getting on the Series S? Well, it is, like, 1080p. Wow, that is some really blocky trees in the backdrop there. It's like a temporal 1080p though, or something like that. Dynamic scaling at 30 FPS. They did mention 60 FPS as an option down the road. I believe that should apply to the Series S as well, so keep that in mind. There's HDR support. There's Dolby Atmos support. You can play the game alone or in co-op up to 4 players, but it is a very difficult game to play by yourself. And that might not make sense to you if you've just started playing the game, but as you continue to play it, you'll see that sort of difficulty, that sort of change in regards to how the game is structured and designed, and it makes a lot of sense as to why I note that it is a pain to play by yourself, especially as the game goes on. But I want to dive into other things first. So, yeah, this is a cooperative focus game where you have a bunch of different classes you can choose from, and you're sort of thrown into this open world where there's vampires, and the cutscenes are done in these really, I would say, kind of lazy 2D, but like, you know, the characters are 3D rendered, but it's like 2D sort of like clips and stuff, and you don't really get to know any of the characters, you don't really care about any of the characters. It's really, really nonsensical storytelling, and it's done in a really uninteresting way. Now, the game is decently long, but with that, just because a game is long does not mean a game is good or well done. This game has a very mundane, boring type of design to it, a gameplay loop that is not fun and is not satisfying. You've got sort of like this design loop where you're going and you're doing fetch quests over and over again. Hey, you're here. Run over there, 600 meters away. Go back to base. Oh, we've got another quest. It's over here, 600 meters away. So when you die, if you don't get like a point of like respawn or something, you have to re-walk 600 meters. So if you don't happen to come across the respawn point or something like that, because this game does not have checkpoints unless you're fighting a boss, you're literally having to walk and walk and walk and then walk a little more. Or sorry, I guess you're running, but it feels like you're walking, even though you're going speedy through these really boring, empty environments that are stale, full of graphic texture load-in, poor performance, constant stutters and drops as you traverse the open world, not to mention actual gameplay performance issues. And while I don't have nearly as much time, I would say, with the Series S version, a lot of the issues that exhibit it are on the Series X version definitely come across here in regards to like texture loading, pop-in, but it does seem like the texture loading and the pop-in is a bit worse, and the resolution quality is quite a bit lower. But at the same time, it does seem like the general sense of like geometry and the world design and everything is fully here. But I mean, it's 1080-30. It's not anything super impressive. But I'm saying it's not necessarily terrible on here in regards to like what the Series S can do. So that element of it is not as bad. But obviously, you know, a shooter game at 30 FPS is atrocious. But I do believe that fundamentally this game is broken beyond the element of whether or not a frame rate increase would do anything to improve the actual experience of this title. So, yeah, it's disappointing because, you know, I never... If you've checked out my content, you know, maybe on streams sometimes I complain too much, whatever, it doesn't matter. But definitely when I go to do my reviews and I go to give my general thoughts on games, I really try my best to find, you know, things that really stand out in a game to me. Things that some people might appreciate. Gameplay elements that, you know, maybe I don't like, but I can see others like. And I try to find some of the best parts of what games have to offer. And this one just is broken a little bit beyond belief in almost every element of play. It's genuinely shocking that this was an okay way to launch a title, especially an Xbox title. I call it brand damaging. Now, you know, Series S, resolutions, everything like that, you know, we know what to expect from the platform, and it's fine. Sometimes it punches above its weight, we get a well-optimized, you know, title with 60 FPS, sometimes it doesn't. But, like, looking at the gameplay elements of it outside of, like, performance and everything like that, it's just, it's really not that interesting. And it's just really a case of, like, a selection of really boring, repetitive missions in a couple open world scenarios with some boss fights kind of attached to some characters that you don't really seem to care about or really get to know about in an interesting way. And it's just like this weird combination of, like, at the beginning, it's super easy going, where it's like a couple bullets and everything just dies. And then you get along, and all of a sudden it's like really spongy enemies to the point, and there's so many enemies, to the point where it's like if you're playing by yourself, you're just drowned, and it's not impossible, but, you know, it's harder when you've got boss fights where the frame rate is tanking. Just tanking well below 30 FPS. And, you know, that's a nightmare. So, yeah, and it's wild seeing this game go from, oh, okay, it's just kind of like a boring, bland shooter to now it's boring, bland, and I have to sit here and shoot over and over again against these guys, and it just gets weirdly exhausting and weird, and it's just not a good time. And I wanted it to be. I mean, you know, it's a game where you're fighting vampires. Vampires are historically really quite cool. I mean, there's been some less flattering takes on vampires over the years, but vampires are pretty neat. You know, and there's cult elements to this game, and they don't really lean into, like, any of it, really, and it's just weirdly empty and boring, and it feels kind of sad to play and sad to look at. And then, you know, we're in New Game Plus, so if you finish an area, you finish this area of the map, you go to another area which is slightly bigger, but I never really cared much to explore the areas, because, well, you know, it's interestingly designed in terms of, like, buildings, and some buildings you can go in and the neat look. You know, it is kind of an ugly world, and there's nothing that really effectively uses the area. So when you go to the next area, you can't come back here. And when you leave that area, like, you kill the final boss, you get back in this area and you start from the beginning of the game again. So there's no choice. You can't just, like, wander around the open world and take it in or anything like that. And that's, like, such a weird design option. I mean, it's not, you know, not crazy, but it's weird. And then another one of the big bugs that I always like mentioning is, like, sometimes things just don't work. Like, you know, like, AI will stop moving, they'll stop functioning, they'll just stand there. And you sit there and you're like, what is going on? Why is this happening? That was the biggest standout point to the game for me, was when I first discovered that, and I spent, like, you know, a good 20 minutes or so talking to, like, an AI that was just standing there, because I was, you know, I was streaming it and I was having a good laugh about it. But, like, it just really does seem like an exercise in just really boring, mundane gameplay, and it doesn't seem to end, and it just goes on and on, which is, like, it's fine that that vampire is just kind of awkwardly floating without actually, you know, it's one of those glitch ones. Usually they stand in one spot, though, so the fact that that one slowly pans around is kind of funny. But yeah, it's just kind of like, again, the level design is uninteresting, the characters are uninteresting, underdeveloped, and underused. And when you play the game, you get to a few of these points where you have to collect these skulls, these underbosses, in order to do a boss. It'll be like, oh, find the boss door, and then it's like, you got to go do these missions. So you have to do a boring, whatever sort of mission. They're very repetitive. You do the same thing over and over again. And then you go fight a boss, and the boss is like one of the same enemy things you fought a million times over, and they've got a slightly different name. And you have to do that 3 times, and it adds about an hour and a half of gameplay every time you have to do that. And like I said, you have to do that a few times. So it's like, it's a game that's padded out by walking, meandering side activities that don't actually add anything to the story, and they just seem kind of random, and they're like, okay, just go do this so that the game is a little bit longer and we can justify the fact that, our game is terrible. And it's just, it's such a weird sort of thing. And then it sucks, because I look forward to this one, and I wanted this to be really good, and I was hopeful that this would be really good. And there's a lot of this game where I'm like, interestingly, if this was done in a different way, maybe this could have been solid, maybe this could have been good. But it's like a really underdeveloped, underput together game where I think even fundamentally, with a number of updates, the game is just broken. It's just, I don't know how you would fix this and make this interesting, because beyond adding like a higher frame rate, which sure, makes the game feel a lot better, smoother, and is kind of what you would expect out of a modern shooter game for a single platform, single family of platform of games and consoles. But apparently that was just too much of a task for them to put together, and it's shocking, because they had the extra year, they had the extra time with this one, they had a lot of time with this one, and it's an embarrassment. It genuinely is just like a complete embarrassment of a game. A brand damaging game. A game where you sit here and you look at this and you're like, why does this exist as it is? It's strange. And that's where I'm trying to loop back to the point where it's like, I'm not just, hating on games just to hate on games. I really do try to provide like honest details so you can sit there and understand why this game has problems, what the issues are, and whether or not it's something that's intriguing for you. And then, you've got different character classes and skills, but all of the skills seem really geared towards playing in co-op. So if you're not playing with other people, you're sort of just like really having a hard time with the difficulty as it randomly spikes, even though it's like really, really like slow and boring at the start with combat. And it just like spikes, and it's like, why is it like this all of a sudden? It's weird. It's like it's all over the place. Like entirely all over the place in almost every section of gameplay. And to me, it's completely bizarre, the structuring and the concept of this one. Because I think, in concept, it's a good idea of a game. Just the execution here is just so tremendously bad that we'll never see this kind of grow and expand. It'll just kind of vanish, and everybody will like make it a bit of a joke down the road, because that's what it is. It's a complete joke that this even exists. I can't believe how many people had to like sit there and give the okay on this one, and they're like, this is an acceptable state, an acceptable way to launch this game. It's tragic. It really genuinely is. I think it blows my mind that we're at a point where it's like, this is okay, because it really, to me it's not. I'm so disappointed by this game in many, many, many ways. This is supposed to be one of the big titles of the year for Xbox, and it's a joke. It's a complete joke. It's it's a waste of hard drive space. It just, I honestly can't even believe that there was like the okay of this one. And it's like, there's so many issues, and I sat there and I just, I had the worst time playing through this, and that's so disappointing. It's like, sure, I'm not gonna like every game I play, but even if I don't like it, it should still look as though it could be fun to people, look as though it like performs well, look as though it has any semblance of a narrative or storyline that's intriguing or something that people would want to play. And it's broken on every level, from like the design to like the bugs to the problems to the crashes to the random nonsense to the lack of having any sort of real intrigue or interest. And it's like, some areas they seem like they're designed for like, maybe a bit of stealth or something like that. But like, you don't you don't really use it. Like, there's no point to it. There's no suggestion to it. There's no need to do any sort of stealthing. And I think you also get a little burned by trying to do anything stealth-wise. Because you need the points to, like, level and be able to, like, you know, shoot stuff and damage things better as you progress in the narrative. It's just, it's so weird, and just, it doesn't work, and it doesn't work in many ways. And I'm like, why is this launching like this is? It's just, it's so insanely weird to me that this game exists as it does, because it's like, this should be a really easy thing to release, to provide an open world, you know, vampire killing game where you get to play with a bunch of your pals. Like, how hard is that? It sounds like, you know, you put in the time, you put in something intriguing to it, you add some layer of mystery and terror and, you know, scares and that, and make it creepy and whatnot, and you should have a really easy big hit for yourself. And it's just, oh, it's a complete mess. It really genuinely is. And, you know, for the Series S side of things, I could sit here and be like, you know, have you seen all of the low texturing, the pop-in, the general, like, of the visuals? But, you know, I think we do know some elements of Series S limitations, but I really try to go past that and just say, like, you know, there are so many problems here that it's just, like, it's not a case of, you know, something easily being adjusted that could be, like, the saving grace to make this game, you know, fixable, functional to a degree where you're like, yeah, this is something I'd recommend, something I think people should play. And I just, like, it's disappointing. But at the end of the day, it's a huge, colossal disappointment. It is shockingly bad. And I really dislike this game passionately. And maybe you grab a group of people and you have some fun online. But, you know, keep in mind only the host has progression. To start a match in multiplayer, you have to have someone there from the beginning. If you're playing by yourself, solo-wise, and, you know, the server resets or something like it did for me while I was streaming, you get kicked to the main menu no matter what you're doing, and you lose progress, and it's like, you know, it would say Arkane server issue, and it's like, what? You know, because it's like, obviously I'm not doing, like, an online type world to my knowledge, or am I? And, you know, the game just didn't enlighten me to that. And yeah, it's just, it's bad. It's really, truly awful. And it sucks because, you know, it bites hard. But, you know, because I wanted this to be a successful game. I wanted this to be a good gem. I wanted this to be something where I'm like, yeah, this was a cool vampire shooter game. Because we don't have a lot of those, you know. You got, like, lots of zombie things and stuff, but you don't really get too many, you know, vampiric type things. And vampires can be fun, they can be neat, they can be scary if they're used effectively. And I think the general concept behind this game provides something that you could have a lot of fun with. There's all these areas of the game I'm seeing where it's like, oh, you know, I haven't really explored this spot or been here. Well, also because it's a new game plus. But, like, you know, there's not a motivation to want to come to these places, to want to see these play spaces, because they're so bland and empty and lifeless. There's no fun or intrigue to them. It's not like I'm going to stumble upon something cool. You know, they've dotted a couple of vampires, but if sometimes when I punch the vampire, it just decides to stand there and not do anything and just kind of, like, look at me, and it's like, what is this? It's weird, is the biggest thing. It's a very, very strange game where I'm really perplexed as to what happened with it, why this was sent out to basically die, and, you know, long term, what's the overall outlook for this one? Because to me, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look like something I'd want to, you know, jump back into. I'd want to you know, explore or investigate or find something fun out of, because I think it's a complete dud in every way. And I think players on the platform deserve better than this, for sure. I definitely do. And, you know, I think the Xbox Series side of things, it's better than what this game is showing it to be. And That's very disappointing to see a game that's like, a big first party title just launch as a complete and utter disappointment in every metric.